Hello and welcome to the first shot. I hold in my hands Covishield. We're at the headquarters of the Serum Institute in Pune, and with me is the man who literally could be saving millions of lives in India and elsewhere. Adar Poonawalla, welcome to the first shot. This is the magic vial. The whole world is waiting for it. You at the Serum Institute in Pune are producing this in greater quantities than anywhere else. How ready are you at this moment for this big launch?
So Rahul, nice to be here with you. This product is something that we've been working on tirelessly, taking a lot of risk ahead of time, for the last 7-8 months. And now we've finally come to the stage where we've got millions of doses, as you can see, being filled and screened and tested and packed for a launch, which is imminent in the next few days. So we're fully ready. Everything is planned, and we're just waiting for the final permission to come from the Drug Controller's Office to launch.
There's been so much conversation and controversy around this vaccine that what I want to do in this discussion is to take our viewers through the entire process of making this vaccine, and then we look at its safety, its rollout, the cost, the advantages, the disadvantages. Tell us what's happening here. Where are we right now in your institute and what's happening here?
So this is the final stage where it is being screened. These are cameras which are going at a high speed, checking for particles and other materials that could be in a vial. You have a rejected side, you have an accepted side. This is the final check before the product is packed and sent out into the market. So we now walk across to where it's being filled, where the vials are processed, and also the bulk is manufactured.
Never before has there been as much curiosity about any one vaccine as there is. We're excited about this walkabout to try and get a sense of how this vaccine is being made. Come, Adar. Adar, you produce more than 20 different kinds of vaccines. Give me a sense of how producing the coronavirus vaccine has been different technologically in terms of challenges from all the other vaccines you produce.
Well, the first challenge was after we had signed up on these tech transfer agreements with our partners, was to do this in a very short span of time. To be able to scale up a process is very challenging. You need to have multiple runs, you need to show consistency and all of that. So, the challenge was to do it at a speed that's never been done before. And we had to, in fact, stop down production of other vaccines so that we could use those plants to do this high-scale level R&D, which normally we would have done in a small scale. So that was one of the major challenges. And of course, the huge risk that we had to take making and rejigging these facilities, without even knowing whether the COVID-19 vaccine would work. Traditionally, with other vaccines, you wait till phase 3 is over, and then you invest in making the product and all of that. Here, we had to bet early on. Hundreds of millions of dollars, as we had explained earlier, was committed and spent so that we could come here today at this stage where even before licensure, we'll take you to the cold rooms and show you millions of doses have been packed and labeled, ready for dispatch.
So what's happening here? I'm very curious to understand the vaccine manufacturing process.
Yes.
So keep explaining as we walk along. What's happening here?
As we saw earlier, it was screened, and before that it's filled. This is the actual filling going on where you've got
those where they're filling up the
injectors. Yes, the bulk is coming in from the floor above, and then it's filled into these vials. This goes on at 500 vials per minute. So, if we have 10 doses, I'm filling 5,000 doses of COVID vaccines per minute. That's my speed at the moment, and that's going to double in February.
So this bottle that I have with me says 5 ml 10 doses. What does that mean? So 10 different people can get from one of these little
That's
vials?
right. And you've got to use that up in 4 or 5 hours because, once you open the vial, it's got an expiry. It has to be used in one session, which means that in 4 or 5 hours, you should, once you've opened it, consume the 10 doses, which is fine and normal. We do that for a lot of our vaccines in the past.
So Adar, what's this place that we're entering right now?
So this is the filling line where we have to gown up, as you can see, and please put on your gloves and other protective gear. This is where the vaccine is actually being filled.
So the place that we're going into right now, Adar, is a facility that no media crew has ever been into?
Yes, I think that's safe to say that nobody is filmed inside the filling areas, and that's where we're going in, so you can have a look.
Delighted that we can get a sense firsthand of how these vaccines are made.
Now we can go through. This is an airlock where till one door is closed, the other door doesn't open.
So this is the most important room in the entire facility?
Yes, absolutely. So,
and he's the chief scientist who's leading this process?
Yes, this is Umesh, and he can explain to you how this is filled, how it's on an automated line where the vials are washed with a high pressure water jet going into it. Then it is sterilized through a tunnel at 200 degrees, and then it's ready to receive the product. So it goes into a container which is so clean and sterilized that there's nothing else that can contaminate the product.
So Adar, I want to spend some time talking about the safety of the vaccines that you're producing. Now the biggest concern world over is how safe is not just the Serum Institute vaccine, all the vaccines that are being made. You know, people are really petrified about the consequences of vaccines that have been manufactured so quickly.
So as you can see, these are fully automated lines. Groninger, Bosch, a lot of manufacturers use German and Belgium and other European automated manufacturers where the vials are washed at high speed, then they're heated at a very high temperature going through this tunnel that you can see in front of you, and then after that it's filled. So the containers in which the vaccine lands up in is very clean, and then of course you saw how it was being screened and checked for all particulate matter to ensure the highest levels of safety. And you know, we have tried to remove human intervention as much as possible, so that, you know, as you can see over here, you can only put your hand in with a glove through these openings here. This is an isolator line, so that you never come into contact. No human being ever comes into contact. As you can see, you put your hand through a glove, so you won't come into contact with the product directly.
So you're talking about the cleanliness of the manufacturing process. My concerns are more about the side effects after someone's actually got the vaccine.
So, you know, whether it's a chimperinovirus or a killed virus, live attenuated virus, different technologies that different vaccine manufacturers are working on, there are bound to be some side effects. That's the case with pneumonia vaccines, measles vaccines, rotavirus vaccines. But this should not, you know, alarm us in any way that vaccines are unsafe or, you know, you're going to get sick. A very small percentage of people react badly to vaccines, but there's nothing to be worried about.
So what are the typical side effects if somebody gets your vaccine?
Little fever, little headache, little sore throat maybe, but that lasts for about 2 days and you take a paracetamol and that goes away. That's been proven in thousands of people globally now who have taken our vaccine, and no severe side effects beyond that have been noticed.
But you also had this one case, Adar, of one person in your trial who claimed after he got the vaccine he had severe side effects. He then sued you for 5 crore rupees in Chennai.
No, see, after investigation of these cases, it was concluded by the health minister and the principal investigators also that these were non-vaccine related issues that that individual had. There were some other incidences abroad also where it was clearly ruled out that after a few weeks, you know, someone developed some issue, and it was clearly not vaccine related. Everybody has concluded that, and the final report has also been concluded on that matter.
No, but the apprehension for those who are the naysayers or the vaccine skeptics is that there is just so much money riding on the idea of coming up with a vaccine and rolling out this project, that even if some side effects are being seen, even if there is some pushback because of the vaccine, people will pepper over it. Hide it under the carpet, ki boss ab roll out karo, jaldi karo, jaldi karo.
No, we've got the highest level of vigilance with the Drug Controller of India, which is monitoring any side effect, no matter how small or big it is, and we are ensuring that no risk to human life is going to be there as a rollout of these vaccines, which is definitely happening at a rapid pace, which is required, and we need to be united in this. You know, it can't just be that a manufacturer takes the risk. Even the public have to have some faith and understand that this is required, because until we vaccinate everybody, nobody is safe.
No, but you put out a statement saying the government should indemnify pharma companies that are manufacturing these vaccines from lawsuits. And people are saying, hey, if I take Adar's vaccine and something happens to me, why should Adar be indemnified?
Correct. Good question. So let me put that in the right context. I mentioned that this is something the government can look at, because even in the US and other countries, we're looking at these laws being invoked by the government to protect manufacturers only during the time of a pandemic where a massive rollout of vaccines is going to happen. And as a result, you know, there are bound to be some bona fide and non-bona fide cases. And if we see the courts intervening and stopping vaccination programs pending investigations, that's the real risk that we're talking about, and we don't want that to happen. To protect the government programs from being paused or looked at, if you remember, there were some incidences where the trial was stopped for about a month when there was a case abroad. And you know, that really puts us on a back step in being able to reach the target of being able to vaccinate that critical mass in a population to build up that immunity that is required. So these lawsuits have the ability to slow down and delay these campaigns, which is the only reason why we suggested to the government that perhaps only during the pandemic rollout of these vaccines, indemnity should be granted to the vaccine manufacturers.
So these are the vials. Where are you getting these for? Are these Indian? Is this Indian glass?
Yes, this is bought from a company called Kaisha, which has the highest quality standards. We've been using them for a lot.
Because I was reading that one of the concerns is
yes,
that given the number of vaccines we need to manufacture, we may simply not have the amount of glass required or the production capability required to manufacture so many vials.
So this is a company called Shot Kaisha, which is a collaboration between my friend Kairas Dadachandji's company and the German counterpart, where the glass is imported and made in India both, and these vials are made in Daman. So we import these, and then these glass vials, as you can see, are being washed at a high-speed line here before.
So what's happening? Keep explaining to us what's happening here right now.
As you can see, which you already shot on the other side, is the washing has taken place.
That's the washing?
Yes. And then it gets fed into the tunnel over here, where it's heated.
What happens inside the tunnel?
It's heated at 200 degrees, so that anything inside that may or may not be there is destroyed before the product comes into contact with the glass vial.
They're decontaminating the vial.
Correct, correct.
And the good thing is that there is no human touching the vial at all.
You can see these are all barriers. The human beings here are only there as a precaution if some part of the automation here needs tweaking, changing, to be stopped or checked or whatever. So it's all automated. You have someone loading it in here, someone picking it up at the other end. So there's no human intervention here at all.
Adar, can you give us a sense of what's happening currently?
No, so as you can see, after it's filled, you have the rubber stoppers that are put on it, and then there are the seals over here, aluminium seals that you can see, that are capped and sealed. So that's the end stage of the product before it goes in for the screening. Again, even this step, which used to be manual back in the day, is now fully automated. So we again minimize the human contact with the product. In fact, there is no human contact with the product till it's all sealed and closed.
How do your safety and technical standards compare with the Pfizer's or the Moderna's?
Absolutely the same. We have the same equipment ordered from Germany, Europe, US. Even the glass that we import sometimes is from there. The rubber stoppers are from Belgium and Holland. You've got chemicals coming in from Denmark. So everything is actually on that standard. The only cost advantage we have is the manpower cost and the energy cost. But apart from that, all the capex, opex, everything is imported. So this is very important to understand. So the quality is the same as any European or US manufacturer now. For example, this machine is from Groninger in Germany.
So you're saying that typically, as far as you're concerned, and in the way that you see it, the production facilities and standards are the same as, say, as Pfizer?
Identical.
So this is your cold storage facility? This is where the booty is hidden and kept?
This is one of them. We've got 20 armed guards all over the campus.
This is precious, you know.
To guard the cold
you can have
rooms.
like an Italian-style heist happening here.
Yeah, you never know what happens. There could be a rush to get the vaccine, and you don't want unauthorized personnel also entering. We don't want theft or want to worry about anything like that.
So I see it says over here that the vaccine needs to be refrigerated between 2 degrees Celsius and 8 degrees Celsius. That's just here, and even later once it leaves the facility?
That's right, because as you can see, you need a lot of space to store the vaccine, and that's one of the advantages of our vaccine, which can be stored at +2 to 8 degrees. Other vaccines, if they have to be stored at -70, you can imagine the infrastructure required.
So typically 2 to 8 is like a fridge at somebody's house, whereas the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines require a deep freezer. So this is where the booty is kept. How much stock do you have at this moment? How many of your vaccines are ready to go?
Well, there's about 40 million doses. You know, we've got more than 2,000 crores worth of vaccines. That's why we've had to put armed security to restrict personnel.
These are all tested, inspected.
It's tested, it's packed, sealed. It's approved by the CDL, which is the Central Drugs Laboratory, ready for dispatch. So now we're just in that final stage of putting it in the vans and sending them off.
This is also a prime target globally for theft. How much would each of these boxes be worth?
Well, as I said, if we're talking about, you know, a couple of crores for each stack. So if you just think about the value that we've got here and the effort we've put in, we really need to be very careful of who comes in and out.
So in terms of doses, the entire stock, how many people can be vaccinated with what you have ready at this moment?
So at the moment, about 25 million people in India or globally can be vaccinated, because this is around 50 million doses. So if you assume 2 doses, then it's 25.
So other bulk of the manufacturing for India's vaccine rollout program will have to be done in these buildings?
That's right. So what you see behind you right here is the world's largest pandemic facility in one location.
How so?
Which can churn out 1 billion doses annually, maybe a little bit more than that also, at a very rapid pace. Knowing where pandemics are going, and you know, we're not even out of this COVID crisis at the moment, if we need more doses to come out very quickly, this is where it will come, and we hope to commission this facility in the next year to year and a half.
I have multiple questions about the manner in which the vaccine dose will be administered. I was reading the results of the UK trials where they very accidentally and fortuitously discovered that, you know, you give half dose first and full dose later, and that's when the vaccine is more efficacious. Is that how you will be rolling out your vaccine in India?
No, so we're going in for a full dose licensure, so both doses will be a full dose. I think what didn't come out very clearly is that the better efficacy of 90% was when you spaced out the doses and the time between dose 1 and dose 2. So if you wait for 2 or 3 months, we found in that group the efficacy was much higher. Of course, that was also the group where half a dose was given. But mainly, you know, if you look at all other vaccines, the longer you keep a gap between the two doses, the efficacy is much higher, and that's exactly what was found.
So you won't be doing this 50% dose first and full dose later, like the Oxford guys did in the UK when the trials were going
I mean,
on?
they might end up having two different regimes eventually when they do further studies, but at the moment, we're going in for a licensure for the full dose.
And what have been the results of the trials in India? So we've read about the results of the trials in the UK. What are you finding out in the trials you're doing here?
Well, we found very good safety. We found 0 hospitalizations in the cases where we've given the vaccine, which means that, you know, it's working very well in protecting you. Of course, it's very important to clarify to everyone that even if you take a vaccine, it doesn't mean you won't get coronavirus. We found that 30 to 40% of people generally taking vaccines will still get infected, but you will not get a severe bout of the infection, you won't be hospitalized. In fact, that's what came out very clearly, that 100% of the people who took the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, none of them had to go to hospital when they got the disease. So this is very important. Even in Moderna and Pfizer and other companies, you find a percentage of people getting asymptomatic cases even in the vaccinated arm, but that's nothing to worry about. That's normal, and please expect that to happen in 30 to 40% of the people.
So from what I've understood, Adar, you're saying a person needs to get the first dose and wait for 2 or 3 months before he gets the next dose. So what happens to coronavirus and my chances of getting coronavirus while I'm between doses?
So, we found that in one vaccinated arm in the trials that were done abroad, overseas, we found far better results when we kept a gap of 2 to 3 months between dose 1 and dose 2. In fact, that group, had a 90% efficacy, and we will do further studies to explore that, and we'll get more news coming out of Oxford and AstraZeneca. But that's, of course, great to hear, because as a result, you'll be able to vaccinate that many more people as well, because you can spread it out. So you'll cover more people with the first dose.
But what's the guarantee that people will come back? Because typically, with other vaccines we've seen, one of the biggest challenges in a 2-dose vaccine is to get people back the second time round.
I think you're right there, but given the crisis and the fact that everybody knows they've got to take 2 doses before they're really protected for the long term, I think that messaging can further go out there. It already has. A lot of people know you've got to take 2 doses. So I think it should be far easier than it has been in the past to get people for the second and third doses. A lot of the vaccines today that you see, and I'll show you over here, are requiring 2 to 3 doses. Now, the COVID vaccines are good with 2 doses, and this is a model of the pandemic facility that we've built.
This is where you brought the Prime Minister?
And yes, this is where he visited us and had a look at...
How was that trip with the Prime Minister?
He went into a detailed look into the manufacturing process, understood the challenges, asked us how, his government could help us. So we put a few points that need to be done, and you can see from here that if you want to go inside one of these buildings, we can see the facility inside, which you get a view and a zoomed version of every equipment and process.
So I'm reading in the papers, Adar, about this new mutant virus strain in the UK, which is supposed to be 70% more infectious than the strain that we've seen so far. How do these new strains impact our vaccine plans?
Well, it's still very early days at the moment, and we don't really know if, the variants are going to really affect the vaccines, because at the moment, the current vaccines seem to be working well against all these minor mutations. These aren't major mutations. So I think the data is still coming in. Let's wait and see what happens.
But at this time, basically,
I don't think there's any need to panic at all right now. And, let's wait and see once it's being tested.
No, but at this moment, essentially, you don't know whether the vaccine will work on the new mutant strain of the coronavirus?
Right now, we've had a lot of health experts examine the data and they feel that it will work. But for us to be completely sure, we should wait another few, we should wait another few days, till it's been tested and clearly proven. So let's wait another week till we...
But is there a big risk that any of these mutations can just, render this whole exercise, this whole build-up, the stocking, the investments, the preparation, worthless?
That was always a risk going in, even early on in March, April, we heard about certain mutations or the virus strain mutating or could mutate. Fortunately, these are minor mutations, and generally with these minor mutations, you don't have too much of an issue when you've developed the spike proteins and the vaccines that today that are being done. Some vaccines are live attenuated vaccines which cover, the whole virus. So that'll take care of all these different combinations.
This is your corporate headquarters inside a commercial airline. Last time I came, this was still a work in progress.
Yes, that's right. We had this space here at this new campus that we've built, and this was a scrapped aircraft which I thought it would be nice to have my personal
Why a
office.
commercial, why have your personal office in a static commercial airliner?
Well, because why not would be the question. I've always liked aviation, been fond of aviation. This is a 40-year-old aircraft. That's the original throttle there. And it's just a nice way, architecturally to have a personal office.
So we're now in the pilot's seat, as it were.
We're in the cockpit at the moment. This is actually the waiting area where guests would wait before coming into the main meeting rooms.
You have a Guinness certificate? Is this the real Guinness records?
Yeah, it is. In fact, we should have been in the Guinness World Book of Records for making the most vaccines, but they've given me this honor because this aircraft, which has been converted into a home-cum office, has been the first time anyone's ever done that, and it's the largest of its kind, around 1,200 square feet, and so that's why they've put that in.
So Adar, how much will each dose of your vaccine cost in India?
So, we have priced it very differently for the government of India. It's going to be at $3 a dose. So 2 doses is $6 per patient per person for the government of India supplies. But for the private market, it'll be at about 700-800 rupees.
So it will be available in the private market at chemists also?
Yes, eventually, the initial emergency use licensure will mean that we will give the vaccine to the most vulnerable, that the government's going to distribute that, and then after that in March, April, it should probably be available to the general public in chemists and other private hospitals, etc.
After March, April, you're currently anticipating that anyone can just walk to a chemist, say, "Meko tika laga do," and they'll give you a medicine?
Absolutely. Hopefully before that, but I think on the outer side, March, April.
So you're not seeing this as being a government-driven and funded program. So it's partly government-driven, and then private citizens can go and do it as well.
Absolutely. Initially for the massive rollout, the government machinery and their logistics and infrastructure is what's required to get it out there to the healthcare workers and all of that. We can't do that. So that's the role the government will initially play, which is necessary. And then once you've covered the elderly and the healthcare workers, the general public, healthy individuals like us at our age group can slowly start getting the vaccine. Other corporates and other people also who want it for their staff and employees.
So what if there's a big corporate watching and their HR department says, "Can we go to your company or elsewhere and purchase for all our employees so they can get back to work and start working like normal?"
Yeah, so I think that's equally important because we need to come back to work safely. Everybody wants that. I think after the initial 1 or 2 months, or maybe even simultaneously if we have enough stock, we can start rolling it out to large corporates who employ, in critical areas. Again, we look for the guidance on that from the government and other industry organizations who can prioritize, again, some kind of priority where whom should get it first, because, it's not only an ethical matter, but it's physically we don't have that much stock initially to go around. So we'll have to just try to do it as fairly and equitably as possible.
How does Adar the efficacy of your vaccine compare with Moderna, with Pfizer, and especially in the context of this mRNA vaccine that's being bandied about so much globally?
No, so we've had 0% of hospitalizations, which is the most important thing. You know, when you have a vaccine being administered, you may not be able to prevent infections in the vaccinated arm. You know, that's common. But a very good indicator of a good vaccine is that the severity of the disease was very low in the vaccinated arm. None of the patients who got the vaccine needed to be hospitalized. And that really is a great testament to the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine.
But if we just look at the percentages that are being put out in Lancet and elsewhere, it would seem that the efficacy of some of the other vaccines is more. You had like a 70% efficacy. The other vaccines had Moderna, I think, at 94%. So does that then mean that Moderna is 24% better than yours?
No. As I explained, there was also another arm in which the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine was 90%. And when we saw...
But the average efficiency was 70%.
No. The average was taken from two different arms and two different dosage regimes. And that's where people got confused. You see, in one regime, you gave half a dose, or even if you ignore that point, the more important part there was the gap between dose 1 and dose 2 was 2 to 3 months. In that regime, we also got a 90% efficacy, and that's what we're going to recommend, that you wait for 2 or 3 months between dose 1 and dose 2, and you will see a much better efficacy.
Because this is going to be a bit like Nike, Reebok, which one is better? Do you think people will start gaming? You know, is Adar's vaccine better? Is the Russian vaccine better with Dr. Reddy's lab? Or should I wait for a Moderna, Pfizer?
Comparisons are bound to happen, but I'll tell you something. Till millions of doses are given for each of these vaccine candidates, nobody can really decide and claim which vaccine is really proving to be better. But any vaccine, let me tell you, more than 70% in its efficacy, even 50% as per the WHO, is very effective in getting ahead of this pandemic. And more importantly, as I mentioned, the severity of the disease. You know, effective in preventing infection is one matter, but the other matter is hospitalization. If your vaccine, like the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, resulted in 0 hospitalizations, that's the most important point here to note, that, you know, none of the people who took the vaccine had to go to hospital. They were asymptomatic and, you know, hardly even knew that they had corona.
So one of my biggest concerns is, how do we ensure that there isn't a wild scramble to try and get hold of that vial once the vaccine rollout starts? You know, it's called in Hindi, jiski lathi uski bhains. Like whoever's friends and family with Adar Poonawalla, they're making calls on the side and saying, Adar, ek zara peti bhejna.
We're going to try and do it as ethically and equitably as possible. The government initially will be handling the rollout so that it's fair. It's given to the elderly, given to the healthcare workers, and you know, after that we'll start rolling it out to corporates and other individuals in the open market who want it as well. We just have to set certain priorities to maintain the ethics and equitable act.
Do you foresee long queues, people fighting with each other, bashing each other up, trying to get a dose of the vaccine?
Well, I don't know how violent it's going to get. I don't imagine that. But yeah, of course, initially there will be a clamoring and shortage, which we'll try to plan it out. Maybe we'll give large volumes to corporates to, you know, give it to their employees and family to remove the burden from the traditional ways of distribution. So we're in early talks with, you know, major corporate houses to see how we can do that as well.
So tell me honestly, have you had the dose yet?
Well, in a few days, I'll be taking it as soon as it's licensed and I can legally take it, and I'll put out a video and a photo because that's very important, because a lot of people have asked, have I taken it, which vaccine would I take, and I'm definitely taking the AstraZeneca.
You may as well, you're telling the whole country to take it. You can't go and take the Moderna vaccine or the Pfizer.
No, absolutely not, and neither do I want to. This is the product that we have a lot of faith in, we've invested in, and you know, the last 9 months of work has led us to this moment. So I'll put out a video to show that I've taken this vaccine as well.
Well, no New Year plans? You're going to be here? No Maldives, no Mauritius, no Seychelles?
Just working.